Welcome everybody, welcome to the Welcome Collection, and great to see so many of you here this weekend. We've got a wonderful day lined up for you, so I'll just tell you a little bit about it. This is this event today is the third in a series of events called Participation, and these are a series of events about sport and the mind. Today's event is called Martial Arts and the Inner You. Skills for a way of life that demand mental and physical discipline, which we'll hear more about later on today. You'll hear talks, you'll see demonstrations of martial arts, and you'll have the chance to participate in Tai Chi.
Our first speaker today. Our first speaker is Tammy Parler. Tammy started Hapkido under Master Chung when she was 12 and has remained a loyal student of his for over 30 years. She set up Chang's Hapkido Academy UK in the early 90s and runs the London school full-time. Tammy says that the things that draws her to Hapkido, apart from just the physical activeness of it, is the constant learning that it provides her. Her practice as an instructor allows her to work really hard to create an environment which supports her students' growth and encourages them as much as possible to express themselves fully. She's written a book on Ki meditation, Ki being a fantastic two-letter word in Scrabble, if anybody's interested, and is currently completing a master's degree in strength and conditioning. Before teaching Hapkido full-time, she was a learning and development professional working.
I'm Tammy Parler, and I'll be talking to you today about Beyond the Dojang, the relevance of martial arts in daily life. Now, as you've heard, I've been practicing Hapkido for 30 years. I started when I was 12, and I still train today under that same instructor, Korean Grandmaster Chang. Hapkido has therefore been a constant in my life, first as a student, now as an instructor and school owner. And through that time, I've noticed a massive link between what happens on the mat and what happens off the mat, both in my own life and also in the lives of my students and colleagues. Now, I really doubt that martial arts are unique in this regard, but they do offer a very particular approach that gives us a chance to explore who we are and potentially who we could become also within our daily lives. This is what I want to talk to you about today. But firstly, how many of you actually practice a martial art here? Wow, quite a lot, okay. For more than 10 years? Wow, quite a lot as well, fantastic. Kind of gets into your bones, doesn't it? Whatever your level of experience, your background, your knowledge of the martial arts, I'd like you, though, to stop for a moment and just consider a few questions. What motivated you to attend this morning? What part of the day or this particular lecture is it that interests you? What questions are you hoping that I'm going to be exploring? And I suppose leading on from both of those, therefore, what lens are you looking at the day through? Just take a moment and have a think. I suppose by reflecting on these, what I'm hoping to do is bring you into the room. I want to remind you what filters you're looking at the lecture through. The more present we are, the more we can potentially gain from a situation. Part of what I think martial arts addresses is how distracted we are. But the more we become aware of the lenses through which we view our experiences, the more we come back to actually what is being experienced. Today, then, I'd like to explore three themes. Firstly, integration. In other words, how we become whole, fully alive and authentic. I'll be exploring this by looking at the concept of separation. If we understand how we separate from ourselves, then we can potentially start to heal the divide and realize our full potential. Naturally, then, that will lead to my second theme, self-efficacy. Self-efficacy, this feeling, this belief that I am capable. As we realize our capability, we move into our third theme, dealing with challenge. For me, my martial arts journey has been a way of realizing these three themes: integration, self-efficacy, and dealing with challenge. Let me tell you a little bit about me. And whilst I share my story, I'd like you to listen out for what you think might be the echoes of those three themes. I guess in many ways I'm a product of immigration and luck, both good and bad. When the recession hit the UK in the early 80s, my family suffered terrible financial problems. And as a result, we moved to America, to Chicago. I was 11. I was shy. I was very English, very underconfident. A decade previous, there had been a substantial migration of many famous Korean Grandmasters to the West. Some went to Australia, many more went to America. Now, interestingly, Seoul and Chicago have similar weather patterns. So naturally, Chicago started to develop quite a Korean community. Yes, that is me. I remember one day, age 12, telling my parents that I wanted to learn karate. I'm developing an American accent now, as you can hear. As luck would have it, a Korean Grandmaster of Hapkido had a school about a 30-minute drive from where we lived. January 6th, 1983, my mom and I went to watch a lesson. And before I knew it, I was in the kit and being taught how to punch. My mom stayed in the office with Master Chang. He liked her accent. He thought she spoke very properly. My mom said that she saw her daughter begin to blossom under the tutelage of Master Chang. Very quickly, I became entranced. Physically, it felt good. Well, most of the time, anyway. I wasn't a natural. I wasn't a natural by far, but I wasn't bad either. Master Chang would lecture on Eastern philosophy and how to be a good person, and I drank up every word, absorbing it into my DNA. When I was 16, I tested for my black belt. I failed. I tested again, and I failed again. Yeah, I was disappointed, but there was no question that I wasn't going to try again. No question. I didn't believe that I could do this. I wanted this. You guessed I passed. I tested a third time, and I passed. That was 1987. I was 17, and I just graduated high school. During the next 6 years, I achieved my second-degree black belt. I started leading many of the classes at Master Chang's dojang, his school in Chicago. I continued getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to the meditation class. Yeah, you heard me. I was a teenager. I was getting up at 4 to meditate. I wasn't typical. And I diligently kept practicing Hapkido with all my being, all my heart. Then immigration popped up again. Now, I don't need to go into the details, but it had to do with a bad immigration lawyer, my parents' citizenship status, and me being over 21 years age. After 18 months of fighting the immigration service, I was told I had to leave my home, America, and I had to do it in 2 weeks' time. This picture was taken a couple days before I left. That's me with Master Chang's family. England was now a foreign country to me. The most terrifying thing for me was that Master Chang wasn't going to be there, and Hapkido wasn't going to be there. I moved into my grandma's house in Gainsborough, Lincolnshire. I was in a total state of shock. The only thing that made sense to me was doing my martial art forms, my patterns, and kicking practice on my grandma's driveway. The neighbours were fascinated. About a month later, I wrote to Master Chang. You know, I can't remember what that letter said, but I sent it next day delivery. And that next day, he called me immediately. The conversation we had went something like this. Tammy, I got your letter. Yes, sir. You set up school, organize seminar. I'll come and visit. Yes, sir. I'm serious, this was the conversation. Everything else okay? Yes, sir. Well, I thought I have to set up a martial arts school now, don't I? That's how my school, Chang's Hapkido Academy UK, started 19 years ago. I set up a club in Lincoln and spent 7 years doing that. I then moved to London and have since spent 12 years here. Doing Hapkido was a way of staying connected to those whom I loved. I was young, I was inexperienced, but it was the only option that I had available to me. I've succeeded in making Hapkido a priority in my life, while working at the Prince's Trust in Learning and Development, later having part-time work that fit around teaching classes, now doing things full-time. And you know, at times it's been really challenging. Through Hapkido, I have stayed connected to the people that I loved, healing that separation both with others and also that internal separation. Hapkido also challenges me to do things that frighten me. I believe that my involvement in martial arts training has made me stronger, both mentally and physically. Now, I don't mean stronger than you are, but I mean stronger than what I was. I don't need to be the best. But what I do want is to keep constantly learning and keep constantly improving. Martial arts training gives me a device through which I can continue to explore who I am and where I fit within society. Now, my experience is kind of unique. Not everyone gets deported from their home. I believe that everybody's experience is valid, though, so I asked some of my black belts why they continue to train 6, 7, 8 years later. When I received my black belt, I knew that I didn't know it all. I have found that my horizons continue to expand and that there is always going to be more to learn. What has been a constant source of strength for me has not been the physical lessons, but the philosophy that underpins the training. Hapkido helps me maintain balance, and it remains one of the tools that helps keep me in touch with a better version of myself. Martial art practice means you are in a disciplined enquiry, an ongoing process of personal examination, of understanding. It gives you space to learn, the tools to practice, and a philosophy for you to explore these questions. Before we take each of the 3 themes in turn, integration, self-efficacy, and challenge, let me talk about the martial art that I practice, Hapkido, and what the term actually means. Hapkido is actually made up of 3 distinct words. Hapkido. Hap means coordination. Ki means mind, or it sometimes is translated as life force, inner potential, inner power, internal energy. To you hear on the end of many martial arts, taekwondo, judo, aikido, hapkido. To means the way, or body, or disciplined life. Hapkido then means the coordination of mind and body, the free manifestation of internal energy through disciplined life. Now, strangely, I haven't mentioned kicking or punching yet. The term Hapkido has a much more profound meaning, something much more transformational. So if this is the goal, where we're hoping to get to, where are we now? What does not being there feel like? I want to focus on the first of my themes, integration. An expert archer faces a target and takes 10 arrows. 10 shots, he hits the bullseye, square on. Now imagine someone comes up to him and says, okay, I'll give you 10 more arrows. For each bullseye you hit, I'll give you £10,000. Sounds good. On average, he might miss maybe 40% now of those bullseyes. Why? It's kind of obvious. He's thinking about the money, isn't he? When we are one, we unify mind and body. We become integrated. If we're no longer one, when we become two or more, we become segmented. We're no longer whole. This is separation. When we become distracted then, like the archer, we become separated from ourselves and from our experience. Our performance declines. We become disconnected from others. We become more led by our emotions. So, there we go. So coordination of mind and body, we can also say the unification of mind and body, means to heal the separation. Centuries ago, on the battlefield, this was incredibly important. If the opponent knew your weaknesses, he could easily manipulate your mind. But also it's important today. We must heal the separation in our daily lives as well. You know, there's a wonderful quote, I believe it's by Jonas Salk, the inventor of the polio vaccine. He said, the meaning of life is felt through relationships to others, to the world, and ultimately to ourselves. When we separate from others, from our experiences, we're separating from life. Sometimes this state of unification has been referred to as flow. It's about being fully engaged in the present. Now, we've all experienced flow at some point, definitely when we're a child, but maybe as an adult, we sometimes say we're lost in what we're doing, totally absorbed in what we're doing. Maybe you've got a really good book on the go, and you're totally involved, engrossed in the story. You're not even aware of the fact that you're turning pages. You don't know where the start is, where it ends. Maybe there's a few musicians out there, a piano player. You're totally engrossed in the music. You don't know where you start, the music begins, or anything. You're just absorbed in what's going on. You know, we don't stay there long, though. We can't maintain that state. Students know this story well. They're all smiling. Take this bowl. This bowl represents the flow state. It's empty. It's present. In this state, we feel positive, loving, peaceful, at one, not bound. Through our daily life, though, we start to place things inside the bowl. I'll call them factors. Each factor has energy and will start to draw the bowl in different directions. Sometimes we know this is happening, but other times not. We might have a fear or a prejudice that we're trying to deny. Sometimes these factors remain dormant, but given the right circumstance, they'll flare up and start to control, to dictate the direction of the bowl. Here's the example of an ex-smoker. Maybe hasn't smoked in 10 years, but for whatever reason goes to a high school reunion, around with his old mates, drinking, others are smoking. Suddenly, oh, I feel like a cigarette. Well, I haven't felt like that in ages. Suddenly, the bowl is being dictated by the contents. Coordination of mind and body, then, means reconnecting with the bowl. Developing an ability to derive moment-by-moment enjoyment and involvement in everything that we do. This sort of process demands an ongoing commitment to understanding oneself and takes courage. I remember, about 20 years ago now, I was deep in my immigration sort of problems. I couldn't work in the States at all, so I just spent all my time at the dojang, at the Master Chang School in Chicago. And I would always teach the morning classes. And before, right at the start, I'd arrived, and the first thing I'd do is I'd clean the whole school every day. And this one day, I turned up and I don't know what was going on. I don't know whether I was struggling at that point more with the immigration. I was feeling a bit depressed. I was definitely distracted. I was quite tired. And I thought, you know what? This place is spotless. I don't need to clean it today. And it was. It glowed. So I did a little bit. I kind of moved a few things around, dusted a little bit, and thought, okay, it's done. Got into my uniform, got ready for the class. Now, I don't know how he does this, I really don't. But that was the one morning that Master Chang arrived. He has this sixth sense, I don't know. He came in, and the first thing he said to me was, Tammy, yes, sir, have you cleaned? What was I thinking? I responded, yes, sir, mostly, sir. Oh dear, I've always remembered it, mostly. Mostly? You never clean, just mostly. You know, his lesson to me wasn't about cleaning the office, but about cleaning the mind. One small weed can become a massive shrub if it's given the right environment. If we want to be fully alive in this moment, we shouldn't stop at just mostly. If I was fully present, if I was integrated rather than separate, I wouldn't be mostly cleaning. Part of me was somewhere else, and interestingly, it affected my performance, and I'll be talking about self-efficacy a little bit later. Separation then means we're being pulled in different directions. It means we're starting to see the world through different lenses. It means we become the owner being led by his dog. Or to use the fruit bowl analogy, the bowl being led by the fruit. Let's stop for a minute and say, I'll have a cappuccino, and say, let's pretend that you're reading a research report of some sort on the wonders of coffee. Let's make it cappuccinos, because I'm kind of partial to cappuccinos. And it says that actually cappuccinos are fantastic for health. Let's make it something in particular. There was something recently in the news about coffee, so I need to pick something obscure. I want to say gout. That's not something we can all relate to. Acne. There we go. Cappuccinos cure acne. You're thinking, fantastic. I'm feeling a bit spotty today. This could be great. You're getting to the end. You're really ready to rush out and buy yourself that cappuccino. And then you read right on the last page, in the small print at the bottom, sponsored by Starbucks Coffee. Now, if you read sponsored by, you'd kind of guess the research maybe had been a little bit compromised. You know, in that same way, we also are sponsored by. The sponsors within us are like the contents of the bowl. They are our beliefs, our prejudices, the things that distract us, the triggers that move us. We can't necessarily get rid of all the sponsors, but we can start to see them, understand what triggers them, and make choices about how we'll respond. Not understanding all of our triggers or all of our sponsors is like only cleaning mostly. Our sponsors distract us, sometimes without us knowing, which means we become separate. If we become more aware of the triggers or what the triggers are, we raise the possibility of understanding the distortions. Without understanding what we're sponsored by, how can we trust our own opinion, our own reactions, or even our physical responses in a fight situation? A clear goal, then, of martial arts practice is to understand our sponsored bys, to notice the lenses through which we view things, and to realize those lenses create distortions. We seek to understand that our view of the world is just a picture, like a tube map is just a picture, one interpretation of London. It's not actually London, it's just a picture. It's not the real thing. And in fact, there can be multiple interpretations of the same situation. We're a mirror that reflects what we have put into our container. We reflect these things selectively, actively shaping events, imposing on them a reality of their own. There's a Korean word called sam. Sam means visual substance, what we experience in the world. Let's take this to the mat. Imagine a smaller, less experienced student facing a larger and more experienced one. If we attach to sam, we panic. He's so big, he's so much more experienced. Oh, look at his muscles, he's going to kill me. They lost the battle before it even started. When we attach to sam, to visual substance, we become sponsored by. We separate from ourselves. We become led by our fear and our anxiety. We're looking to notice that this is happening. We must empty and we must let go. Now, this isn't a new concept. To understand this intellectually is a fairly simple task. But it's not enough just to know it. We've got to practice it, we've got to do it, and we've got to do it consistently. So what has this got to do with martial arts? Let's try and connect to how martial arts practice affects integration. Martial arts training helps us notice ourselves and to practice certain behavior. At the start of every class, we always begin with meditation practice, just breathing. Breathing is the simplest, most accessible, and effective tool we have to reconnect with the present moment. Breathing and emotion are linked. We gasp in pain, we sigh in relief, we stop breathing momentarily in fright, in anger. We can use the breath to calm us down, to concentrate the mind, and to achieve clarity of thought. The meditation practice isn't about relaxation, it's about waking up. I read a number of years ago a great definition of meditation. It was to see our original nature and not become confused. Or to know that we are the bowl and not become confused by all, that's a jumper, all the contents that we're putting inside the bowl. Traditional martial arts practice is very disciplined. It incorporates loads of etiquette. They bow when they enter the room. They never use an instructor's first name. They always accept things with two hands. When an instructor asks them a question, they immediately respond, "Yes, sir," "Yes, ma'am." Disciplined practice is mental training. The physical practice creates mental habits. You know, that sort of practice is hard. Some students say, "Why do I bow? Why do I bow to you? You're no better than me." But this is martial arts training. Why are you resisting so much? That's the thing that I'm interested in. I tell them, this is your training. Let go of your anxiety. Let go of your office meeting. Let go of your need to prove you're anything. Face reality. In martial arts, we bow. So bow. They bow to the instructor, to the black belt, but it's not for their instructor's benefit. Through this process, they learn to empty their minds. This process changes people. You can see that internal change manifested externally. When they first join, they're still questioning. Their bow is kind of quick, a little shallow. The more they train, they get black belt. Their bow becomes much slower, much deeper. They become more humble. They start to let go. You know, one of my students who was probably the most resistant, the most questioning for all the etiquette and things. I had a chat to him recently. He still trains. I asked him, why does he still train? How was he able to get over his issues with, he was the one who said, you're no better than me. Why am I bound to you? You know, one of the biggest reasons he said to me, He said, it reminds me to be humble. He's actually CEO of his own business. Practicing humility has directly and positively affected the climate and productivity of his company. How else does it change people? Students have said, I found that I can now take a step back and remove the clutter from my mind. I was expressing myself more naturally because I wasn't so self-conscious or distracted by anxiety. I've wasted time with an internal dialogue with myself, always making noise in my head. Why am I being asked to do this? Am I good enough? Can I be as good as everyone else? Through discipline, I have learned to begin to quieten those voices so I can concentrate on the task that I'm being told to do. How we appear in one part of our life influences the other parts of our life. How they are on the mat, in the school, in the dojang, will directly impact how they are at work with their family and friends. There's a fantastic samurai maxim. It said, he who has mastered an art will reveal it in his every action. A couple of years ago, I was going up north to my school in Lincoln with Master Chang, and we were going by train. And we were getting on the train. I got on the train. I looked around, and he'd gone. Now, it's not good to lose your master. So I started to wonder, where is he? I looked out the window, and there he was. There were two young ladies with a massive suitcase. And he was with them lifting this huge suitcase onto the train. And they were kind of looking at it in amazement. Now, to put this kind of into perspective, Master Chang is quite small. He's greying. He's in his mid-70s. And these two young ladies who could equally have moved that, but no, he's a man. He needs to politely help them with their suitcase. He came onto the train and sat down next to me, and I said, "Oh, sir, I thought I'd lost you, sir." And he laughed. He said, "Oh, no, I was helping them outside." And he stopped, and he said, "You know, I don't think about my age or anything else. I just do it. I jump into reality." His beliefs and how he behaves totally match. Now, many of you have been involved in martial arts, or if you haven't, you've seen martial arts on the TV and so forth, so you're very aware of breaking wood. We do it a lot. You know, one piece of wood held with two hands isn't very hard to break. It's more of a mental skill rather than a physical skill. Can you hold your composure, your quality of movement under pressure? It helps to answer the question, right now, are you master of your mind? Taking both these stories, what emerges for me is integration, being present, not being distracted, enables us to connect more fully with those around us. And as with the story about the wood, enables us to perform more effectively, which leads to my second theme. The second theme is self-efficacy. And what I mean by self-efficacy is a belief in one's own competence, a belief that one is capable of handling whatever life throws our way. You know, when we reconnect with who we are, an amazing thing starts to happen. We start to believe that we can. We see things more clearly. We become the owner leading the dog instead of the other way around. Having belief alters habits, enables us to tackle obstacles, makes change more feasible. I believe that we've got more control than we think. You all know we reap what you sow. In other words, you're in control of your own destiny. But also, when bad things do happen, you know, I tell students before they test for their next belt, you might make an error. It happens. How you cope with that error is the much more interesting thing to me. In other words, we also process what we reap. We see this playing out during target practice. Now, target practice, an instructor or black belt will be holding a target, and students will be lined up one after one, and one by one they'll kick the target, go back to the end of the line. A student will come up and miss the target, or kick it quite poorly. Oh, God, I don't believe I just did that. Oh, in front of anyone. I'm black belt, and God, they're kicking better than me. You know, once where they stay in this state, they'll miss the next 3 kicks as well. I hit them with the target. I say, wake up. You're doing the same kick. You're stuck in a mental loop. That kick has passed. Do this kick now. Self-efficacy has a huge impact. Here's a few more quotes. I've made at least half a dozen very close friends. I've stopped smoking. My alcohol intake is under control. When I'm with the people I love, I actually try to be there with them. My mind does still wander, but I'm better at bringing it back to the present. Life is a fuller experience. At work, by not reacting to the external factors, I began to successfully deal with often competing project deadlines, thus earning a number of promotions and respect of my colleagues. At the risk of sounding contrived, I feel a greater capacity, willingness, and desire to care, which I'm seeing can have a profound effect on those around me. Self-efficacy is about realizing our power, our potential, our key, if we focus it in the right way. Some of you may be familiar with this epitaph. It's meant to be in Westminster Abbey. When I was young and free and my imagination had no limits, I dreamed of changing the world. As I grew older and wiser, I discovered the world would not change, so I shortened my sights somewhat and decided to change only my country. But it too seemed immovable. As I grew into my twilight years, in one last desperate attempt, I settled for changing only my family, those closest to me, but alas, they would have none of it. And now, as I lie on my deathbed, I suddenly realize if I had only changed myself first, then by example, I would have changed my family. From their inspiration and encouragement, I would have been able to better my country. And who knows, I may even have changed the world. We have incredible power within us. If we tap into that power, if we realize and believe that we can, then we can face whatever life throws our way. The third theme is dealing with challenge. Now, often I'm asked if I've ever had to use Hapkido in a situation. You know, most honestly, I use it all the time in everything that I do, but I think they're actually asking for me something a little bit more physical. Have I had to defend myself and so forth? The closest I've come is this story. It was a couple of years ago. There was a guy who came to my school. Now, I can't remember if he took part in the class or whether he just watched it. But after the class had finished, he came up to me. Siobhan, you're smiling. You were actually in that class, I believe. Yeah? He said, I want to fight you or one of your students. I want to see how Hapkido responds. He was insistent, a little aggressive. I said, oh, well, that's not what we really do. I can't let you do that. He was really insistent, I want to fight one of your students. I smiled. I said, well, I'm not really into that. There's no need to do that. I joked with him a little bit. Why would I want to fight you? You seem like a nice guy. He finally left. He was a bit confused. You know, after the fact, I thought about it. Oh, my God, that could have been a really difficult situation. At the time, I wasn't thinking about anything. I was just kind of like, why would I fight you? But it could have been really awkward. I could have responded with fear, anxiety, aggression, needing to prove myself, my capability. Something inside me has changed, though. I didn't need to prove myself. Through exercising a physical art, you're actually changing your internal processes, which means that challenge is viewed differently. I heard a similar story from one of my students. He doesn't train with me anymore, but at this point he'd been with me for about 6 months. He said, Sabonim is the name, it means instructor, it's what they call me. He said, Sabonim, last night I needed to go and get something from the local store. And I walked up, and outside the store, right outside the entrance, there was this guy looking at me really aggressively. He said, Sabonim, the old me would have thought, oh, okay then. I would have stared aggressively back. I would have thought, I need to prove myself. I need to, what does he want, this sort of thing. But, you know, for some reason, I didn't. I smiled at him, and I walked in the store and got my stuff. He said the interesting thing was, when I came out of the store, I looked on the other side of the street, and he was in a fight with somebody else. You know, the aggressor previously would have triggered something within my student. He would have become separated from himself and got pulled into conflict. Thankfully, though, he doesn't need to do this anymore. The road we travel to become an expert at something teaches us about challenge. You know, there's a lot of stuff in the news and science stuff all about expertise being built on 10,000 hours of deliberate practice. There's a great quote from Bruce Lee: "I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks, but the one who has practiced one kick 10,000 times." Yeah, you know that quote too. You know, the hours are just the way. 10,000 kicks are just the way. What determines whether someone gets there or not is how they process failure. Are they failing, or are they just not succeeding this time? Across any sport, across life, the ability to handle pressure and failure is what lifts people from mediocre to greatness. If you remember the previous story about the student missing the kicking target, if he can't get past his own failure, he'll be too frustrated to succeed or to put the hours in necessary to perfect the technique. As we practice for many years, things start to shift internally. When they're joined, they're much more extrinsically motivated. So they focus on things external to them. The next technique, obtaining the next belt, wanting a black belt. As they train, they become more intrinsically motivated. Oh, what just happened there? Is that something? Oh. Anyway, they become more intrinsically motivated. Their focus becomes more internal. They want to improve their life, be constantly learning and growing. Life and learning are a process, not an outcome. They start to develop an inner belief in themselves. They believe that abilities are transformable through effort, or, you know what, we can handle it. Black belts and other senior students help beginners when they join. And through that process, the senior student's self-efficacy grows, and they're focused towards doing something that matters, doing it well, and doing it in the service of a larger cause. No surprise that giving back actually increases their happiness too. Do we have any? He's coming down, okay. Wonder if I pressed something by mistake. You know, they learn that they don't need to tie themselves down to anything. You know, I'm told in India, when an elephant is small, they'll tie a rope around its neck. I'll come back to that in a sec. They'll tie a rope around its neck and put a stake into the ground. And the elephant, the baby elephant, will try and escape. But it can't because it's tied to the ground. Then the elephant becomes a mature adult. It's massive, it's incredibly strong. But still that same rope with a little stake in the ground, and they don't move at all. When we face difficult situations, we often act like the elephant. But through a belief in our self-efficacy, we cut the rope, and we're able to face challenge with courage. Oh, we're back.
Good.
Great, thanks. There's my elephant. We did that, right? Yeah. Whilst lecturing at a running club, Master Chang said that, you know, if someone attacked me, I wouldn't want to cause injury, so I'd run away from the conflict. After the talk, he asked for questions, and someone put their hand up, and he said, you know, I'm in a running club, I'm a good runner. If someone attacked me in the street, I'd run as well. How are you and I any different? I loved Master Chang's response. He said, in the morning, I could eat my breakfast. His point was that as we grow, as we become integrated. As we heal that separation, we realize our capability, our self-efficacy, which means that we're able to handle challenge. All of this together means that the motivations for our actions and also, therefore, any emotional hangover become different. Challenge is not as scary. We get better at managing ourselves, our own reactions. We become less distracted. We get better at focusing our attention on what is right in front of us now. So to refer you back to Master Chang's response, his ability to eat his breakfast, he was present. He was fully aware of his capabilities, at ease with challenge, and therefore had no hangover to deal with the next day. On challenge, students have said, if there's one thing I understand about Hapkido, it was that getting back on the saddle after a setback is as important as being really good at something. I know if I can make strides at something that I find as difficult as Hapkido, then I can make quantum leaps in the things I do well. You know, there are potentially as many experiences of martial arts as there are people. One martial art is no better than another. Finding the right instructor, I would say, is paramount to how you'll develop. My own instructor, Master Chang, continues to be a huge inspiration to me, as do my own students, some of which you've heard from this morning. The personality of the instructor will form the environment in which the students train. That community will nurture the belief in individual potential. We all have incredible power within us, but stress, anxiety, anger, arrogance locks that potential up. To me, martial arts practice is a way of unlocking ourselves, healing that separation so we become fully alive and able to tackle the challenge that life throws our way. Daily practice has shown me that ordinary things done consistently can produce extraordinary results. A last quote from another student of mine, but these words I particularly recognize. First and foremost, I love Hapkido and Ki meditation practice, and it's my passion. For me, there's pure joy in the actual act of training. I feel completely alive when I train. I'm not sure there's any other reason at the root of it all. I simply can't imagine not training. It would be like part of me is missing. Thanks for your attention. Look forward to any questions.
I think one of the beauties of Hapkido is you don't need to be physically strong in order to get control of the situation. Hapkido is primarily a self-defense art, but it's designed to subdue an attacker without causing physical injury. Also, if I understand how the body works, I understand pressure points, how to maybe throw somebody off balance, then I can easily get control of the situation. For instance, where I take his head or where I take his foot will naturally be like a corkscrew and will influence the whole rest of his body. Very simple movements that I can do. And actually we could just sit for a little bit. What's your name? Sometimes people say, yeah, but what if they resist? Well, the amount of techniques we've got means we can easily. And if all else fails, you just kind of sit up. Can you get up? Very little bit to get over the point. I'm just going to. Can you get up? No. I'm sorry. very simple kind of wrist type techniques. These are the things that when you first join Hapkido, they're the first kind of techniques that you'll learn. Hapkido is, as I say, a self-defense act, but you can still, so most of the skills that we do are from someone actually attacking, be it grabbing, choking, maybe rushing, this sort of thing. But the techniques can equally be used in order to instigate an attack, not that I'm... having the joint throws, the joint manipulation and so forth, we used to also do kicking and punching. Yeah. Something about this doesn't seem fair somehow. Oh dear. We usually go all over the place. I don't know. So he's great to be able to respond like that. You have to be totally empty. If you're thinking about anything at all, you won't be fast enough. So it's great. Okay, that's